The bitter January wind cut through Jack McAllister's worn jacket as he trudged through the freshly fallen snow. His hands, red and raw from the cold, clutched his old sketchbook, the only Christmas present he could afford for his sick sister Anna. The streetlights of Lindenwood cast long shadows across the empty streets, their dim glow barely penetrating the pre-dawn darkness. That's when he saw him. A figure slumped against the brick wall of the community center, motionless in the growing snowdrift. Jack's heart pounded as he approached. It was the man he'd seen around the neighborhood lately, the one people whispered about, the one who seemed to appear and disappear like a ghost. "Hey, sir? Are you okay?" Jack's voice trembled, not just from the cold. No response. Moving closer, he could see the man's lips had turned blue, his breathing shallow and irregular. Jack dropped his sketchbook in the snow and rushed forward, shaking the man's shoulder. "Please wake up. Someone help." But the streets were empty. No cars, no pedestrians, just the howling wind and the soft hiss of falling snow. The man's eyes fluttered open for a moment, revealing a gaze that seemed to pierce straight through Jack's soul. "Help," he whispered, before slipping back into unconsciousness. Jack fumbled for his phone, the old flip phone his mother insisted he carry for emergencies, and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. As he waited, he pulled off his jacket, draping it over the man despite his own body's protest against the cold. "Stay with me," he pleaded, rubbing the man's hands between his own. "Please stay with me." The sound of approaching sirens cut through the morning silence. As the paramedics rushed forward with their equipment, Jack stepped back, his thin t-shirt offering little protection against the biting wind. One of the paramedics turned to him. "You probably saved his life, kid. A few more hours out here." Jack watched as they loaded the mysterious man into the ambulance, its red lights painting the snow in crimson pulses. As it pulled away, he retrieved his now soaked sketchbook from the ground, its pages warped and running with ink. The drawing he'd spent weeks perfecting for Anna was ruined. But standing there in the cold, watching the ambulance disappear around the corner, Jack couldn't bring himself to regret his choice. Something about the man's eyes, that brief moment of connection, had awakened something in him, a realization that sometimes the greatest gifts come from the sacrifices we make for strangers. What Jack didn't know, as he hurried home in the growing light of dawn, was that this moment would set in motion a chain of events that would change not only his life but the entire community of Lindenwood. The man he'd saved was not who he appeared to be, and the true price of kindness would prove to be something far more valuable than any possession he could have ever given his sister. If you found this story touching, please consider subscribing. Your support helps me create more meaningful content that explores the depths of human emotions and life's profound moments. The McAllister family's descent into hardship began on a rainy Tuesday in October. Tom McAllister, a skilled construction worker known for his gentle smile and unwavering work ethic, took an extra night shift to help pay for his daughter Anna's mounting medical bills. The overtime wasn't unusual. He'd been working double shifts for months, determined to give his family the life they deserved. But that night, exhausted from weeks of endless work, he made a fatal mistake on the scaffolding. The phone call came at 2 a.m. Maggie McAllister's world shattered as she listened to the hospital staff's careful, practiced words. Jack, then 13, watched his mother collapse into herself, her body racked with silent sobs. 8-year-old Anna slept peacefully upstairs, unaware that her father would never read her another bedtime story. The insurance company found a loophole. Tom's extra shift wasn't properly documented. The settlement they offered barely covered the funeral expenses, leaving the family drowning in medical debt and monthly bills. Maggie tried to stay strong, taking on multiple jobs as a waitress and cleaning houses, but the light in her eyes dimmed with each passing day. The grief manifested as deep depression, though she fought to hide it from her children. Jack watched helplessly as his mother disappeared into herself, spending sleepless nights at the kitchen table surrounded by past due notices and insurance denial letters. He learned to cook simple meals, help Anna with her homework, and handle household chores without being asked. The weight of responsibility settled onto his young shoulders like a heavy cloak. Anna's condition worsened without proper medical care. The genetic disorder that had been manageable with regular treatments now threatened to overwhelm her small body. Each night, Jack would sit by her bed, drawing pictures to make her smile and telling stories about their father keeping his memory alive while trying to shield her from their harsh reality. The McAllisters' modest home, once filled with laughter and the smell of fresh baked cookies, became a quiet place of careful conversations and worried glances. Bills piled up, utilities were shut off one by one, and meals became increasingly sparse. Jack learned to ignore his own hunger, saving the best portions for Anna and slipping extra food onto his mother's plate when she wasn't looking. And their neighbors, once friendly, began to distance themselves as if poverty were contagious. Jack overheard whispered conversations at school about how the McAllisters had let themselves go since Tom's death. The cruel words stung, but he held his head high, remembering his father's words, "Your character is what you do when no one's watching." On particularly difficult nights, when Anna's coughing kept them all awake, and the heating system sputtered in protest against the cold, Jack would retreat to his father's old workshop in the garage. Among the dusty tools and half-finished projects, he would sketch in his worn notebook drawings of the life they used to have, the life he dreamed of giving back to his family. Art became his escape, his way of processing the grief and responsibility that threatened to overwhelm him. The final blow came when Anna's doctor, Dr. Sarah Mitchell, pulled Maggie aside after a routine checkup. The specialist appointments they couldn't afford, the medications they had to ration, it was all catching up to them. Without proper treatment, Anna's prognosis was grim. Jack overheard the conversation from the waiting room, his hands clenching into fists as he watched his mother struggle to maintain composure. That evening, as Jack helped Anna into bed, she looked up at him with their father's eyes. "Am I going to get better, Jackie?" she asked, her voice small but trusting. He squeezed her hand, forcing a smile he didn't feel. "Of course you are, Squirt." I promise it was a promise he had no way of keeping, but in that moment he swore to himself he would find a way anyway to save his family. Little did Jack know that salvation would come from the most unexpected source, beginning with a simple act of kindness on a cold winter morning that would change everything. Lindenwood wasn't always a neighborhood divided by invisible lines of wealth and status. Once a thriving middle-class community, the economic downturn had carved deep trenches between those who managed to stay afloat and those who sank beneath mounting debts and lost jobs. The East Side, with its manicured lawns and renovated Victorian homes, stood in stark contrast to the West Side's crumbling apartment complexes and boarded-up storefronts. At the center of this social divide stood Franklin Draper, a man whose name was whispered with equal parts fear and resentment. As the owner of most of the rental properties on the West Side, Draper ruled over his domain with an iron fist and cold efficiency. His monthly inspections were more like intimidation tours, during which he would note every minor infraction and add them to his tenants' ever-growing list of violations. The local high school, Lindenwood Central, mirrored the community's disparities. Students from the East Side arrived in new cars, carried the latest technology, and enjoyed private tutoring sessions. Meanwhile, West Side students like Jack fought daily battles against prejudice and low expectations. Teachers unconsciously favored the well-dressed, well-fed students, while guidance counselors steered poorer students toward more realistic career paths. The divide was most visible in the school cafeteria, where students segregated themselves not by race or interests, but by socioeconomic status. The East Side kids occupied the central tables, their lunch trays loaded with fresh cafeteria meals. The West Siders huddled near the walls, many nursing small packed lunches or nothing at all. The community center, once a hub of neighborhood activity, had fallen into disrepair. Its paint peeled in large sheets, and the playground equipment rusted beneath generations of neglect. Yet it remained the only neutral ground in Lindenwood, a place where the invisible boundaries occasionally blurred. Franklin Draper's influence extended beyond his properties. He sat on the town council, chaired the business association, and maintained close relationships with local law enforcement. His word could make or break a family's chances of finding housing, securing employment, or receiving community assistance. The local shops told their own story of division. The East Side boasted artisanal coffee shops, boutique clothing stores, and organic markets. The West Side made do with dollar stores, pawn shops, and a single struggling grocery store that charged higher prices for lower quality goods. The irony of poverty costing more was not lost on its residents. Even the churches reflected the split. St. Mark's Episcopal on the East Side hosted wine tastings and charity galas, while West End Baptist ran a soup kitchen and clothing drive with dwindling resources. Both preached about helping thy neighbor, but the definition of neighbor seemed to stop at the invisible line running down Main Street. Yet beneath the surface tensions, memories of a different Lindenwood lingered. Older residents remembered block parties that spanned both sides of town, little league games that brought families together, and community projects that united neighbors regardless of their address. These memories lived on in faded photographs hanging in the community center's dusty hallways, silent witnesses to what had been lost. The seasonal festivals that once filled Memorial Park had dwindled to sparsely attended events, mainly patronized by East Siders who viewed them as photo opportunities for social media. The West Side residents, unable to afford the entrance fees or feeling unwelcome, watched from beyond the decorative fencing. This was the Lindenwood that Jack McAllister navigated daily, a place where zip codes determined destiny, where kindness had become a luxury many couldn't afford, and where hope seemed as scarce as the dollars in his mother's worn purse. But beneath the surface of this divided community, currents of change were stirring, waiting for someone brave enough to challenge the status quo. Jack McAllister stood at the intersection of childhood and premature adulthood, a 15-year-old boy with eyes that carried wisdom beyond his years. His artistic talent flowed through every sketch he created, each drawing telling stories of both escape and hope. Despite the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, he maintained a quiet determination that reminded people of his father. His worn clothes and calloused hands spoke of hardship, but his gentle smile held echoes of a resilience that couldn't be broken. Maggie McAllister, once known for her infectious laugh and vibrant spirit, now moved through life like a shadow of her former self. Depression had dulled her once bright eyes, but beneath the grief lay a fierce maternal love that kept her going. She worked multiple jobs with quiet dignity, her waitress uniform and cleaning clothes worn like armor against the world's judgment. Each night she would sit at the kitchen table, bills spread before her like a desperate game of solitaire. Anna McAllister, at 8 years old, possessed a wisdom that only comes from facing mortality too young. Her genetic condition had weakened her body but strengthened her spirit. She crafted elaborate stories from her hospital bed, her imagination soaring even when her body couldn't. Despite the pain and uncertainty, she remained the family's light, her smile a reminder of why Jack fought so hard. Clara Summers emerged as Jack's unlikely ally at school. Coming from a middle-class family that straddled Lindenwood's divide, she saw beyond social barriers. Her fierce sense of justice and natural leadership abilities made her a bridge between two worlds. She shared her lunch with Jack without making him feel like a charity case, and defended West Side kids with a fearlessness that earned both admiration and criticism. Franklin Draper cut an imposing figure in his tailored suits and polished shoes. His face, lined with years of bitterness, rarely showed emotion beyond contempt. Yet behind his harsh exterior lay a tragic story: a son lost to drug addiction, a marriage destroyed by grief, and a heart hardened by guilt. His power over the community served as a shield against his own pain, though few knew the true cost of his emotional fortress. Lauren Draper, Franklin's 16-year-old daughter, inherited her father's determination but not his coldness. She watched from her privileged position as her father's actions affected families like the McAllisters, her conscience increasingly at war with family loyalty. In secret, she began documenting the community's struggles, her private journal filled with hopes of making amends for her father's actions. Mr. Reynolds, Jack's art teacher, recognized the raw talent and emotion in his students' work. Unlike other teachers who had written Jack off, Reynolds saw potential beneath the poverty. He quietly supplied Jack with art materials, creating a safe space in his classroom where talent mattered more than social status. And then there was Eli, the mysterious figure whose true identity remained hidden behind carefully crafted poverty. His designer clothes exchanged for ragged layers, his educated speech softened to match expectations, he observed the community with purpose. His eyes held decades of experience and regret. His apparent homelessness, a chosen disguise for a mission few could comprehend. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Anna's pediatrician, fought against the healthcare system's bureaucracy with determined professionalism. She saw beyond medical charts to the human cost of poverty, often working overtime to find creative solutions for families like the McAllisters. These characters, each carrying their own burdens and hopes, would become interconnected in ways none of them could predict. Their individual stories, like threads in a tapestry, would weave together to create a picture of community, redemption, and the transformative power of compassion. As their paths crossed and diverged, they would discover that in Linderwood, everyone's story was part of a larger narrative, one that was still being written with every choice, every act of kindness, and every step toward change. The morning after saving the mysterious man from freezing, Jack retraced his steps to the community center. His ruined sketchbook weighed heavily in his backpack, along with the peanut butter sandwich that represented his entire lunch. The bitter January wind hadn't relented, and Jack pulled his father's old scarf tighter around his neck, his only protection since giving away his jacket. To his surprise, the man was back, huddled in the same spot against the brick wall. He looked less desperate than the previous morning, but still thoroughly worn down. His grey beard was unkempt, his clothes threadbare, but his eyes, they held something that made Jack pause. There was an alertness there, an intelligence that seemed at odds with his appearance. "You're the kid from yesterday," the man said, his voice carrying an unexpected warmth. "The one who called the ambulance." Jack shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. The man patted the ground beside him. "Name's Ellie. Guess I owe you my life." Hesitantly, Jack sat down, maintaining a careful distance. "I'm Jack. Are you? Should you be out here? The hospital let you go already." Eli chuckled, though there was little humor in it. "Hospitals don't keep people like me longer than they have to. Besides, I've weathered worse storms." The wind whipped around them, and Jack noticed Eli shiver slightly. Without thinking, he reached into his backpack and pulled out his sandwich. Breaking it in half, he offered the larger portion to Eli. "Here, it's not much, but..." Eli stared at the offered food, something flickering in his eyes that Jack couldn't quite read. "You don't have to do that, kid. I've seen you around. No, you don't have much to spare." "My dad always said sharing what little you have matters more than giving from abundance," Jack replied, the words coming automatically, though they sent a pang through his heart. Eli took the sandwich with careful hands, examining it as if it were something precious. "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Jack said quietly, looking away. The past tense hung heavy in the air between them. They ate in silence, watching early morning commuters hurry past, averting their eyes from the sight of the homeless man and the shabby teenager sharing a meager breakfast. What Jack didn't notice was how Eli's gaze followed each passerby, noting their reactions, their judgment, their indifference. "You're an artist," Eli said suddenly, nodding toward Jack's backpack where the damaged sketchbook peeked out. "May I?" Jack hesitated before pulling it out. The pages were still warped from the snow, the drawings smudged but mostly salvageable. Except for Anna's portrait, that one was beyond repair. Eli handled the book with surprising gentleness, his weathered fingers carefully turning each page. He studied each drawing intently, the detailed sketches of the neighborhood, the portraits of tired but dignified West Side residents, the imaginative scenes that spoke of hope and transformation. "You see them," Eli murmured, almost to himself. The real them beneath the surface. Before Jack could respond, the first bell rang from the direction of Lindenwood Central. He jumped up, gathering his things quickly. "I have to go, I can't be late again." "Keep the rest of the sandwich," Jack added, already backing away. "I'll bring another tomorrow if you're here." Ely watched him hurry away, his expression thoughtful. Once Jack was out of sight, he pulled a sleek phone from inside his ragged coat and typed a brief message. "Found him. He's the one." What Jack didn't know as he slipped into his first class of the day was that this simple act of sharing had set larger forces in motion. Eli wasn't just observing, he was evaluating, testing, searching for something specific. And in Jack's instinctive kindness, his natural ability to see beyond surfaces, Ely had recognized the catalyst he'd been looking for. The storm that hit Lindenwood that January wasn't just meteorological. On the same morning Jack shared his sandwich with Ely, Franklin Draper launched his own offensive against the West Side residents. Rent increase notices appeared under doors like death sentences, their cold, legal language masking the human cost of each percentage point. The McAllisters' notice arrived with Maggie's morning coffee. Her hands trembled as she read the numbers: a 30% increase, effective in 30 days. The cup slipped from her grasp, shattering on the worn linoleum, dark liquid spreading like an omen. Jack found her there, kneeling among the ceramic shards, tears mixing with spilled coffee. At school, the crisis manifested differently. Anna's morning had started with another coughing fit, severe enough to warrant a visit to the nurse's office. The school nurse, Mrs. Bennett, made the call Maggie had been dreading. Anna needed to see her specialist immediately. The same specialist they could no longer afford, especially with the looming rent increase. The hallways buzzed with similar stories. Maria Rodriguez's family had already received an eviction notice. The Thompsons were selling their car to make rent. Even the Chen family's grocery store, a West Side institution for 20 years, faced closure under the weight of Draper's new commercial rates. Clara found Jack during lunch, her face flushed with anger. "Did you see this?" She thrust a newspaper at him. The headline read "Local Developer Plans Luxury Renovation Project." Below was a photo of Franklin Draper, standing proudly before a blueprint of modernized apartments none of the current residents could afford. "He's not just raising rents," Clara explained, her voice tight. "He's pushing everyone out. They're calling it neighborhood revitalization, but it's just a fancy word for displacement." The crisis peaked that afternoon during a heated town council meeting. The community center's ancient heating system wheezed and rattled as residents packed the main hall. Franklin Draper stood at the podium, his expression imperious as he outlined his vision for a new Lindenwood. Jack watched from the back, sketching the scene in his recovered notebook: the desperate faces, the clenched fists, the way Draper seemed to tower over everyone from his elevated position. Lauren Draper caught his eye from across the room, her face a mask of conflicted emotions as her father spoke about necessary progress and market realities. When Anna's coughing interrupted Draper's speech, his annoyance was palpable. "This is precisely why changes are needed," he said coldly. "The current environment is unsuitable." The word carried enough venom to silence the room. That evening, Jack overheard his mother on the phone with Dr. Mitchell, her voice breaking as she explained their situation. Anna's medication had already been rationed to dangerous levels. The rent increase would make even that impossible. In his room, Jack added to his growing collection of sketches a series he called The Real Lindenwood. Each drawing captured a moment of crisis: Mrs. Rodriguez packing her family photos, Mr. Chen changing his store's open sign to going out of business, Anna sleeping fitfully beneath a pile of blankets because they couldn't afford to run the heat. What he didn't draw, couldn't bring himself to capture, was his mother's face when she thought no one was watching. The defeat in her eyes was too raw, too personal to commit to paper. Unknown to Jack, Ely observed all of this from his various posts around the neighborhood. He watched the community fracture under pressure, noted how people either turned against each other or banded together. Most importantly, he watched Jack, how the boy responded to crisis not with despair, but with quiet determination, recording it all in his sketchbook like a visual historian of human dignity in the face of injustice. The idea came to Jack during art class, as Mr. Reynolds discussed how artists throughout history had used their work to inspire social change. Jack's latest sketch, a phoenix rising from the ruins of the old community center, caught his teacher's eye. "This is powerful work," Jack, Mr. Reynolds said, studying the drawing. "Have you considered sharing it more widely?" When Jack looked confused, he continued, "Art has a way of making people see truth they'd rather ignore." After class, Clara and Lauren cornered Jack in the hallway, their unlikely alliance born from shared concern over the community's fate. Clara, practically vibrating with energy, pointed to his sketchbook. "What if we used your art to wake people up? Make them see what's really happening here." Lauren, glancing nervously over her shoulder as if her father might materialize, added, "I can help. I have access to the community center keys, and Dad never checks what happens there after hours." That evening they gathered in the dusty community center. Jack's drawings, carefully hung with Clara's fairy lights, transformed the deteriorating space. The Phoenix mural, now expanded across a full wall, seemed to glow with inner fire. Lauren had brought supplies from her father's office: paper, markers, a printer she'd borrowed. Words spread through whispered conversations and hastily passed notes. Students from both sides of town trickled in, drawn by curiosity and the promise of change. Even some teachers appeared, Mr. Reynolds among them, offering quiet support and practical advice. Ely watched from the shadows as Jack led his first community meeting, his voice growing stronger with each word. The boy described his vision: not just art on walls, but a movement, a way to reclaim their community's soul. The phoenix would be their symbol: resurrection, renewal, hope rising from despair. "We can't fight Draper with money," Jack explained, pointing to his drawings of West Side families, "but we can fight him with truth. With our stories, with art that makes people feel what's happening here." The energy in the room shifted as others began sharing their stories. Maria Rodriguez's grandmother spoke about building the original community center with her own hands. Mr. Chen revealed how his grocery store had helped countless families through hard times with unofficial tabs and generous credit. What started as an art project evolved into something larger. Clara organized committees: one for gathering stories, another for creating murals, a third for community outreach. Lauren, surprising everyone including herself, volunteered to document everything, creating a record that couldn't be ignored or erased. Jack's Phoenix design appeared around town, first as small sketches tucked into corners, then as larger murals on approved walls. Each iteration told a story: a family fighting eviction, a child battling illness, a community refusing to be erased. Ely continued observing, but now with a growing smile. He watched Jack work late into the night, adding detail to the community center mural despite his exhaustion. He saw how the boy saved his best art supplies for teaching younger kids to draw, using pencil stubs for his own work. The movement grew organically, drawing strength from unexpected sources. East Side kids started crossing the invisible boundary, drawn by the authenticity they found in West Side stories. Small donations appeared: art supplies, snacks, offers of help. Franklin Draper, of course, noticed. His first reaction was to threaten to shut down the community center entirely. But something in the Phoenix's defiant eye gave him pause. Perhaps it was the way it reminded him of his late son's art, or maybe it was the quiet pride he glimpsed in Lauren's face when she thought he wasn't looking. What none of them realized yet was that this spark of resistance, this simple act of creating beauty in the face of destruction, would ignite a transformation far beyond their imagining. The Phoenix was rising, and with it, the soul of Lindenwood itself. The transformation of the old community center began on a February morning, as frost patterns traced delicate designs across its grimy windows. Jack stood before the building, his breath visible in the cold air, surrounded by an unlikely group of volunteers. Clara had mobilized students from both sides of town, Lauren had borrowed her father's maintenance keys, and even Mr. Reynolds had shown up with coffee and donuts. "It's not much," Jack said, gesturing to the dilapidated structure, "but it's ours." His voice carried a conviction that made the peeling paint and broken gutters seem less like signs of decay and more like opportunities for renewal. The first week was dedicated to basic repairs. East Side students with access to their parents' tools worked alongside West Side kids who knew how to make things last. They cleared debris, patched holes, and scrubbed years of grime from windows. Jack's Phoenix design, now evolved into a massive mural, began taking shape on the largest wall. Lauren proved invaluable, though few knew why. Her father's position meant she knew exactly which permits they needed and how to obtain them legally. She worked behind the scenes, ensuring their project couldn't be shut down on technicalities. Each night she returned home to dinner with Franklin Draper, carrying their secrets behind a carefully maintained facade of teenage indifference. The center's transformation accelerated as word spread. Local businesses, sensing a shift in the community, began contributing. The hardware store offered discounted supplies. Mr. Chen, despite his own struggles, provided snacks for the volunteers. Even some East Side parents, intrigued by their children's sudden interest in community service, wrote checks for youth development. Jack established an art program first, teaching children from both sides of town. He showed them how to mix colors, create perspectives, tell stories through images. More importantly, he taught them to see beauty in their community struggles. Their artwork began filling the center's walls, not just pretty pictures, but powerful statements about life in Linderwood. Clara expanded the initiative beyond art. She organized homework help sessions, knowing many West Side parents worked multiple jobs and couldn't assist their children. East Side students, usually competing for college admissions, discovered that teaching others actually improved their own understanding. The academic divide began to blur. The center's kitchen, dormant for years, sprang back to life. Mrs. Rodriguez taught cooking classes, sharing family recipes that stretched ingredients without sacrificing flavor. These sessions evolved into community dinners where residents from both sides of town found themselves sharing meals and stories. Eli watched it all unfold, making occasional appearances as the homeless man who offered surprisingly insightful suggestions. He noted how Jack worked tirelessly, but always saved energy to help others, how the boy's artistic talent was matched by his ability to inspire those around him. The project faces its first major test when the heating system failed during a particularly cold week. Lauren warned them that her father would never approve funds for repairs. The next day, anonymous donations appeared, cash slipped under the door, checks from unexpected sources. Jack suspected Eli's involvement but couldn't prove it. Most surprising was the change in the students themselves. The social boundaries that had seemed so rigid began to dissolve. Athletes helped carry supplies, honor students learned practical skills from their West Side counterparts, and friendships formed across previously impenetrable social lines. Mr. Reynolds expanded his art classes to the center, bringing supplies and professional instruction. He recognized that Jack's initiative was accomplishing what the school had failed to do, creating genuine integration and understanding between students from different backgrounds. The Phoenix mural grew more elaborate as different people contributed their ideas. Jack incorporated symbols meaningful to various community members: Mrs. Rodriguez's roses, Mr. Chen's lucky cat, the basketball that had helped Marcus Williams earn a college scholarship despite poverty. One evening, as Jack added final touches to the mural, he found Lauren staring at it intently. "My brother would have loved this," she said quietly. "Before the drugs, he was an artist too." It was the first time she'd spoken of her dead brother, the family tragedy that had hardened her father's heart. The project's success began attracting attention beyond Lindenwood. Local news outlets ran stories about the youth-led initiative bridging community divides. Social media spread images of the Phoenix mural and its message of renewal. Small grants and donations started flowing in from neighboring towns. What none of them realized was that they were being watched, not just by Eli, but by others who saw potential in their grassroots movement. The mysterious donations, the timely arrival of needed supplies, the surprising lack of bureaucratic obstacles, all were part of a larger plan set in motion by forces they didn't yet understand. Jack, focused on each day's challenges and small victories, remained unaware that his simple vision of community renewal had set something much bigger in motion. The real test of their project and their community was still to come. Franklin Draper's response to the community center's revival came swift and calculated. First, he filed complaints about code violations, sending city inspectors to scrutinize every repair and modification. When that failed to halt progress, he announced plans to redevelop the property, claiming the current activities violated his long-term vision for Lindenwood. The pressure extended beyond official channels. Parents of East Side students received subtle warnings about associating with troubled elements. Business owners who supported the project found their lease terms under sudden review. Even Mr. Reynolds faced questioning about his extracurricular involvement with students. Lauren found herself caught in an impossible position. At home, she endured her father's increasingly bitter monologues about ungrateful tenants and community troublemakers at the center. She witnessed firsthand the positive changes taking place. The strain showed in her face, in the dark circles under her eyes, in the way she jumped at every phone notification. Local politics complicated matters further. The town council, long accustomed to following Draper's lead, began debating new zoning regulations that would effectively prohibit community gatherings in residential areas. The proposed changes were wrapped in bureaucratic language about public safety and proper facility usage. Jack faced challenges on multiple fronts. Anna's condition worsened, requiring more frequent hospital visits. Maggie picked up extra shifts to cover the medical bills, leaving Jack to balance project leadership with increased responsibility at home. His grades began to slip, drawing concerned attention from teachers who didn't understand the weight he carried. Resources became a constant struggle. Art supplies disappeared mysteriously, forcing Jack to improvise with recovered materials. The heating bill mounted as winter deepened, and anonymous donations barely kept pace with expenses. Every success seemed matched by a new obstacle. Clara's family faced backlash from their middle-class neighbors. Her parents' insurance business lost several East Side clients, and whispers circulated about their daughter's misguided social justice crusade. Yet Clara remained resolute, though Jack sometimes caught her crying in the storage room when she thought no one was watching. The center's success in bridging social divides triggered unexpected resistance. Some East Side parents complained that their children were distracted from academic achievement by community service. West Side families worried about their kids developing unrealistic expectations about social mobility. Mr. Chen's grocery store felt the squeeze as suppliers mysteriously began demanding payment in advance. The Rodriguez family's housing application for a better apartment was repeatedly lost in processing. Small acts of retaliation rippled through the community, testing loyalties and resolve. Even Mr. Reynolds, for all his support, could only do so much. The school administration restricted use of art supplies and facilities for non-curricular activities, forcing him to supply materials from his own limited resources. His tenure review was suddenly moved up, adding subtle pressure to distance himself from the project. The media attention, initially positive, took a darker turn. Local papers ran stories about juvenile delinquency and unsupervised gatherings, painting the center's activities in suspicious tones. Social media trolls targeted their online presence, spreading rumors and discouragement. Jack's art became a particular target. Critics dismissed his work as propaganda, questioning the appropriateness of political themes in youth art. The Phoenix mural was vandalized twice, though volunteers quickly restored it each time. The symbolism of destruction and renewal became literal. Through it all, Eli maintained his homeless persona, observing how each challenge was met. He watched Jack's leadership style evolve, noted how the boy found creative solutions without compromising his principles. The opposition seemed to strengthen rather than discourage the community's resolve. The project's darkest moment came when anonymous complaints led to a full safety inspection. The center face shut down over minor violations, a loose handrail, slightly outdated fire extinguishers, minimal issues that suddenly became critical concerns. The repairs would cost thousands they didn't have. Lauren discovered the inspection was scheduled through her father's influence, but sharing this information would reveal her role as an informant. The weight of dual loyalty became almost unbearable as she watched her friends scramble to address violations she'd known were coming. Yet each challenge revealed unexpected allies. A retired contractor offered to fix the handrail for free. An East Side parent, moved by their children's dedication, quietly supplied new safety equipment. The community's response to opposition proved stronger than the opposition itself. What none of them realized was that these challenges were partly orchestrated tests designed to reveal the true strength of their commitment and community bonds. Eli's hidden influence ensured that no obstacle became truly insurmountable, while watching how they worked together to overcome each difficulty. As winter deepened into its darkest months, the opposition intensified. But like the phoenix rising on their wall, each attempt to extinguish their efforts only seemed to make them burn brighter. The real question wasn't whether they could survive the challenges, but who was really behind them and why. The revelation came on a stormy March evening, as wind and rain lashed against the community center's windows. Jack had stayed late, touching up the Phoenix mural, when he noticed Eli entering not in his usual ragged clothes, but wearing an impeccably tailored suit. The transformation was so complete that Jack nearly dropped his paintbrush. "I suppose an explanation is overdue," Eli said, his educated accent no longer disguised. He stood differently now, with the confident posture of someone accustomed to commanding rooms rather than blending into their shadows. "My name is Elias Montgomery. 20 years ago, I was exactly what Franklin Draper is now." Jack remained frozen, his mind struggling to reconcile the homeless man who'd shared his sandwich with this polished figure before him. Eli, or rather, Elias, continued walking toward the mural, his expensive shoes clicking against the freshly cleaned floor. "I owned properties across 3 states, built my fortune on urban renewal projects just like Draper's planning. I was very good at making poor people disappear and rich people feel good about it." His voice carried a weight of regret that seemed to fill the room. "Until it cost me everything that mattered." As if summoned by the confession, Lauren appeared in the doorway, followed by Clara. Their presence made Eli smile sadly. "Ah, perfect timing. You should hear this too," he gestured to the chairs they'd salvaged for community meetings. "My son David was an artist like you, Jack. He tried to show me what my business practices were doing to communities. I didn't listen. He turned to drugs to cope with what he saw as his father's cruelty. And..." Eli's voice cracked. "I lost him. By the time I understood what really mattered, I'd destroyed my family, my marriage, and countless lives like yours." Lauren's sharp intake of breath drew attention. "David Montgomery," she whispered, "my father used to work for you. He talked about you when he thought I couldn't hear, said you disappeared after your son." "After my son died of an overdose in one of my own condemned buildings," Eli finished. "Franklin worked for me during that time. He saw what wealth and power did to me, yet he's choosing the same path." Jack found his voice at last. "All this time, watching us, testing us. Why?" Eli moved to the window, watching the storm rage outside. Redemption, perhaps, or maybe just hope. I've spent years looking for communities worth saving, people worth investing in. When I saw you share your lunch that day, knowing you had so little to spare, I knew I'd found what I was looking for." The anonymous donations, Clara realized, the supplies that kept appearing just when we needed them. "Yes," Ely acknowledged, "but I needed to be sure you could build something real, something lasting. Money alone can't fix a broken community. It takes people like you, Jack, people who see beyond surfaces and inspire others to do the same." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the Phoenix mural in stark relief. "Your father would be proud," Ely said softly to Lauren. "Franklin wasn't always who he is now. My son's death changed him too, hardened him. He was there that night, tried to save David." Lauren's eyes filled with tears. "That's why he won't talk about that time. Why he's so she couldn't finish. Why he's so determined to maintain control, to keep emotions at bay," Ely completed. "But watching you all, seeing what you built here, it's time for change, real change." He withdrew an envelope from his jacket. Inside is proof of my identity, documentation of a foundation I've established, and a proposal. I want to put the community center and surrounding properties in trust for the community, with you three as part of the governing board. The implications slowly sank in. "You're going to stop my father's development plan?" Lauren asked, her voice a mixture of hope and fear. "Better," Ely replied. "I'm going to show him a different way. The way I finally learned too late for my own son, but perhaps not too late for this community." Jack looked from the envelope to the Phoenix mural, understanding flowing through him. "That's why you chose the Phoenix as your foundation's symbol when you first saw my drawing. It's not just about renewal. It's about rising from our worst mistakes," Ely finished. "About transformation through loss and hope. Your art saw truth before you knew the whole story, Jack. That's a rare gift." The storm continued raging outside, but inside the community center, something new was taking shape. None of them could have guessed that sharing a sandwich would lead to this moment, yet somehow it felt like everything had been building toward this revelation all along. The transformation of Lindenwood accelerated with breathtaking speed after Eli's revelation. The Phoenix Foundation, as it came to be known, didn't just provide funding, it offered a blueprint for community-led development that preserved the soul of the neighborhood while improving its infrastructure. The community center became a hub of constant activity. Jack's art program expanded into a full-fledged cultural center, offering classes in everything from traditional painting to digital design. Students from both sides of town discovered their voices through art, their work increasingly featured in local galleries and even a dedicated wing of the center. Clara's academic initiative evolved into a comprehensive education support system. College students from nearby universities began offering free tutoring sessions. The program's success caught the attention of education researchers who documented how cross-community collaboration improved outcomes for all students involved. Lauren, freed from the weight of secrecy, threw herself into project management. Her business acumen, inherited from both her father and shaped by watching Eli, helped transform good intentions into sustainable programs. She established partnerships with local businesses, creating apprenticeship opportunities for West Side youth. The center's success sparked a ripple effect throughout the neighborhood. Empty storefronts reopened as community-owned businesses. Mr. Chen's grocery store expanded, becoming a model for affordable, quality food access. The Rodriguez family's cooking classes grew into a catering business that employed local residents. Most significantly, the project began healing Lindenwood's deep social wounds. East Side families, initially drawn by their children's involvement, found themselves forming genuine friendships across the invisible boundary. Weekend barbecues, once segregated affairs, became community gatherings where lawyers and laborers shared meals and stories. Health services improved dramatically. Eli's foundation established a partnership with the local hospital, ensuring that children like Anna could receive proper care regardless of their family's financial situation. Dr. Mitchell now headed a weekly clinic at the center, providing preventive care and health education. The Phoenix mural continued to evolve, with Jack incorporating new elements that reflected the community's growth. Each edition told a story: a medical cross wrapped in healing vines, books taking flight like birds, hands of different colors clasped in partnership. The artwork became a living history of their transformation. The project's impact on young people proved especially profound. Dropout rates plummeted as students found purpose in community involvement. College acceptance letters began arriving in West Side mailboxes with unprecedented frequency. Local businesses, inspired by the center's apprenticeship program, created scholarship funds. Environmental improvements followed the social changes. Community gardens sprouted in vacant lots, providing fresh produce and green spaces. Solar panels appeared on rooftops, reducing energy costs for struggling families. The center itself became a model of sustainable renovation, proving that progress didn't require destruction. Mrs. Rodriguez's English classes became a symbol of the project's holistic approach. What started as basic language instruction evolved into cultural exchange sessions where residents shared their heritage through stories, food, and art. The classes helped break down barriers that language differences had reinforced. Jack's own family felt the transformation deeply. Maggie found work managing the center's operations, her natural organizational skills finally receiving proper recognition and compensation. Anna's health stabilized with consistent care, and her artwork began appearing alongside her brother's on the center's walls. The media narrative shifted dramatically. Instead of stories about crime and poverty, journalists now covered Lindenwood's innovative approach to community development. The Phoenix mural appeared in national magazines, with Jack's artistic vision praised as a catalyst for social change. Youth leadership emerged as a cornerstone of the project's success. The Student Council, once focused solely on school dances and fundraisers, became a vital link between young people and the center's governing board. Their perspectives shaped everything from program development to building improvements. Even the physical appearance of the neighborhood reflected the internal changes. Historical buildings were preserved and restored rather than demolished. New construction complemented existing architecture instead of replacing it. Gardens and public art transformed neglected spaces into community gathering spots. The center's influence extended beyond Lindenwood's borders. Delegations from other communities began visiting, hoping to learn from their example. Jack and his friends found themselves conducting workshops on community organizing, sharing their experiences with groups facing similar challenges. The project's success attracted corporate interest, but Eli's foundation helped maintain local control. Investment came with strict conditions about community benefit and resident participation. Development served the neighborhood's needs rather than external profits. Perhaps most remarkably, the project began healing individual wounds alongside community ones. Families torn apart by economic pressure reunited as opportunities improved. Elderly residents found purpose teaching traditional skills to younger generations. Former adversaries discovered common ground in shared goals. Through it all, Jack continued drawing, his sketchbook filling with images of hope and renewal. Each page captured a moment of transformation: children playing in new playgrounds, elderly residents teaching crafts in restored spaces, families sharing meals in community gardens. The Phoenix had indeed risen, bringing with it a community reborn from its own ashes. Despite the project's remarkable success, personal challenges mounted beneath the surface. Jack's responsibilities grew exponentially, stretching him between family obligations, school, and community leadership. Dark circles appeared under his eyes as he stayed up late completing homework after long hours at the center. Anna's health took an unexpected turn for the worse. Despite the improved medical care, her genetic condition proved stubborn. One morning, she collapsed during art class, leading to another hospitalization. Jack spent nights sketching by her bedside, his own health declining as he refused to leave her alone in the sterile hospital room. Maggie's depression, though improved, still surfaced in waves. The pressure of managing the center's operations while worrying about Anna's health wore her down. Sometimes she'd freeze mid-task, overwhelmed by memories of Tom and fears for her children's future. Jack would find her staring blankly at old family photos during her breaks. School became an increasing struggle for Jack. His grades slipped from S to CS as he sacrificed study time for community work. Teachers who had once praised his potential now sent concerned notes home. The guidance counselor suggested he focus on academics and let others handle the community project advice that ignored the reality of his commitment. Clara noticed Jack's exhaustion but faced her own challenges. Her parents' insurance business continued losing clients, forcing her to take a part-time job to help with family expenses. She tried hiding her situation, but Jack recognized the same worn look in her eyes that he saw in his mirror. Lauren's relationship with her father deteriorated further. Franklin Draper, though quieter in his opposition since Eli's revelation, turned their home into a battlefield of cold silences and bitter accusations. She began spending nights on the center's old couch, unable to face another breakfast table confrontation. The strain showed in small ways, Jack's hands shaking as he tried to paint, his sketches becoming darker and more chaotic. During community meetings, he would sometimes lose his train of thought mid-sentence, exhaustion clouding his usually sharp mind. Physical exhaustion led to mistakes. Jack accidentally ordered the wrong supplies for an important workshop, nearly derailing the event. During a presentation to potential donors, he mixed up key statistics, causing moments of awkward silence. Each error chipped away at his confidence. Anna's medical bills mounted despite the foundation's support. Some experimental treatments weren't covered, forcing Maggie to make impossible choices between hope and financial stability. Jack overheard her crying on the phone with Dr. Mitchell, discussing payment plans and treatment options. The pressure began affecting Jack's art. His once vibrant colors turned muted, his phoenix designs showing more struggle than triumph. Mr. Reynolds noticed the change but didn't know how to help his student carry such adult burdens. Sleep became a luxury Jack couldn't afford. Between hospital visits, project management, and attempting to maintain his grades, he averaged 4 hours a night. He started drinking coffee by the pot, his hands jittery as he worked on murals or project proposals. A weight loss became noticeable. Jack's clothes hung looser as he skipped meals to attend meetings or complete assignments. Clara started bringing extra food to share, but he often forgot to eat it, lost in the endless cycle of responsibilities. Nightmares plagued his rare hours of sleep. He dreamed of falling phoenixes, of Anna's hospital monitors flatling, of his mother's tears. Sometimes he woke up shouting his father's name, the grief he'd suppressed surfacing in his vulnerable moments. His own health began to suffer. Frequent headaches made it hard to concentrate. During a community presentation, he nearly fainted, catching himself on the podium at the last moment. The incident scared everyone, but Jack insisted on continuing despite Clara's protests. The emotional toll became harder to hide. During a quiet moment at the hospital, Jack broke down in tears, overwhelmed by the fear of losing his sister and the pressure of holding everything together. A nurse found him curled up in the waiting room, sketching through his tears. Eli observed these struggles with growing concern. He recognized in Jack the same dangerous pattern of self-sacrifice he'd seen in his own son, the tendency to carry everyone's burdens while ignoring personal needs. School counselors began suggesting Jack scale back his community involvement, not understanding that the project had become his lifeline, his way of making sense of the chaos in his personal life. Their well-meaning advice only added to his stress. The breaking point loomed closer each day. Jack's hands started trembling too much to paint accurately. His speeches, once inspiring, became rambling and disconnected. Even his siblings noticed the change, sharing worried glances when he wasn't looking. Yet through it all, Jack refused to step back. Each new challenge seemed to fuel his determination. even as it drained his resources. The phoenix on the wall watched over him, its wings spread in either triumph or warning. No one, not even Jack, was sure which anymore. The question wasn't if Jack would break, but when and whether anyone could catch him when he finally fell. The evolving dynamic between Jack and Franklin Draper defied simple explanation. During community board meetings, they sat at opposite ends of the table, their interactions charged with unspoken tension. Yet occasionally, when Jack stayed late at the center, Draper would appear, ostensibly to inspect the property but lingering to watch the boy work on his murals. "You paint like him," Draper said one evening, his voice uncharacteristically soft. When Jack looked confused, he added, "My son." He used to lose himself in his art too. The moment passed quickly, but it marked a subtle shift in their relationship. Draper began leaving art supplies in his office, which Lauren would accidentally discover and donate to the center. Eli and Caroline's reconciliation progressed in careful steps. She attended board meetings as a silent observer, studying her father's interactions with the community. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her with such naked hope that she had to look away. Their conversations, when they happened, carried the weight of decades of absence. "I used to hate you," Caroline told Eli during one particularly honest moment. Not for losing everything, for giving up on us. After the pain in her voice echoed through the empty center. Eli's response was barely audible. "I gave up on myself, not you. I just didn't know the difference then." Lauren's relationship with her father grew more complex as she straddled both worlds. At home, Franklin alternated between angry outbursts and periods of withdrawn silence. But sometimes, late at night, she'd find him in his study, looking at old photographs of her brother, his defenses momentarily down. Clara and Jack's friendship deepened through shared struggles. They developed a wordless understanding, anticipating each other's needs during busy days at the center. When Jack skipped lunch to work, Clara would silently leave sandwiches by his easel. When Clara's family faced foreclosure, Jack spent nights helping her research legal options. The relationship between Maggie and Dr. Mitchell evolved from doctor-patient to something more personal. The physician became a regular at McAllister family dinners, her presence bringing a warmth to their small apartment that had been missing since Tom's death. She helped Anna with science homework and offered Maggie a shoulder to cry on during rough days. Mr. Reynolds and Jack formed a mentor-protégé bond that went beyond art instruction. The teacher recognized in Jack the same passion that had drawn him to art decades ago. During quiet moments in the art room, they discussed not just technique but life, loss, and the healing power of creativity. The most surprising relationship developed between Anna and Franklin Draper. During her hospital stays, he'd appear with books or art supplies, awkwardly attempting kindness. Something about her resilience reminded him of his son's early years, before addiction took hold. These visits became more frequent, though neither he nor Jack acknowledged them directly. Eli and Franklin's past connection cast shadows over their present interactions. During board meetings, their civil discourse barely masked deeper tensions. Yet sometimes they'd share knowing looks when discussing community challenges, their shared history creating an understanding that no one else could fully grasp. Mrs. Rodriguez and Lauren formed an unlikely alliance, with the older woman teaching the teenager her family recipes, while Lauren helped with English paperwork. Their friendship bridged cultural and economic divides, proving that the center's impact extended beyond its official programs. Jack and Caroline developed a unique rapport based on their artistic sensibilities. She recognized in his work the same raw emotion that had characterized her teenage years, while he found in her a mentor who understood both art and loss. Their conversations often turned to her father, helping Jack understand Eli's complexity. The relationship between the East and West Side students evolved from cautious cooperation to genuine friendship. Study groups became social gatherings, birthday parties drew kids from both sides of town, and long-held prejudices began dissolving through daily interaction. Mr. Chen's relationship with the community deepened as his store became more than just a business. He extended credit during tough times, offered jobs to struggling teenagers, and turned his back room into an unofficial community meeting space. His generosity inspired other business owners to invest in the neighborhood's future. The most profound transformation occurred in the relationship between the two sides of Lindenwood itself. The invisible boundary began to blur as residents discovered their shared hopes and fears. Community dinners, art shows, and cultural celebrations brought people together who had lived as strangers despite their proximity. Through these evolving relationships, the true impact of the Phoenix Project became clear. Beyond the physical improvements and programs, it was changing how people saw each other and themselves. Each interaction, whether small kindnesses or dramatic confrontations, contributed to the community's transformation. Yet these relationships also carried risk. The more intertwined people's lives became, the more they had to lose if the project failed. The weight of these connections added both strength and vulnerability to their shared endeavor, creating a delicate balance that would soon be tested in ways none of them could anticipate. The crisis began with a letter. It arrived on official city letterhead, its contents sending shockwaves through the Lindenwood community. The zoning board, citing anonymous complaints about unauthorized modifications and safety concerns, had suspended the community center's operating permit. Effective immediately, all programs were to cease until a full investigation could be completed. Jack found the notice taped to the center's door on a Monday morning. His hands trembled as he read the bureaucratic language that threatened to destroy everything they'd built. Around him, children arriving for morning art classes gathered in confused clusters, their parents whispering worriedly among themselves. The timing couldn't have been worse. Anna had just been admitted to the hospital again, this time with a severe respiratory infection. The experimental treatment doctor Mitchell had recommended was showing promise, but it required consistent appointments and monitoring, all coordinated through the center's health program. Inside the building, chaos erupted as news spread. Clara frantically called enrolled students' families, trying to arrange alternative meeting spaces. Lauren pored over legal documents, searching for loopholes or procedural errors they could challenge. The sense of helplessness was palpable. That afternoon, during an emergency board meeting, the deeper implications became clear. Without the center's programs, many West Side students would lose their tutoring support mid-semester. The food distribution network, serving over 100 families, would collapse. The medical coordination program for vulnerable residents like Anna would disintegrate. Eli, his face grave, revealed more troubling news. The foundation's accounts have been frozen, he announced. Someone filed a complaint alleging financial irregularities. Until it's resolved, we can't access any funds. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Jack watched the community he'd helped build begin to unravel. Parents who'd relied on the center's after-school programs scrambled to find alternatives they couldn't afford. Elderly residents who'd found purpose teaching traditional crafts sat idle at home. The vibrant hub of community life fell silent. The investigation itself seemed designed to find fault. Inspectors scrutinized every repair, questioned every permit, and demanded documentation for every program. Each day brought new requirements, new forms to fill out, new hoops to jump through. The process felt less like oversight and more like harassment. The media, once supportive, began running stories questioning the center's management. Anonymous sources hinted at misappropriated funds and unsafe conditions. The same programs that had been praised as innovative were now portrayed as reckless and unprofessional. But Anna's condition deteriorated rapidly without the coordinated care the center had provided. Maggie, stretched thin between hospital visits and job hunting now that the center was closed, began showing signs of her depression returning. Jack found himself torn between his sister's bedside and the struggle to save the center. The community's response proved both heartening and heartbreaking. Families offered their homes for impromptu classes. Local churches opened their doors for program activities. But these stopgap measures couldn't replace the comprehensive support system they'd built. The Phoenix mural, Jack's masterpiece, began to weather without regular maintenance. Rain seeped through the building's closed windows, causing colors to run and paint to peel. It seemed a cruel metaphor for their current situation, beauty and hope literally washing away. In the midst of this chaos, Franklin Draper remained conspicuously silent. His absence from town council meetings raised questions, especially given his history of opposition to the center. Lauren, now practically living at the center, despite its closure, couldn't reach him at home or office. The crisis reached its peak when city officials announced a public hearing to determine the center's fate. The notice gave them just 1 week to prepare their defense, 1 week to prove that their work was worth saving, that the transformation they'd sparked deserved to continue. Jack stood before the fading Phoenix mural late one night, his artistic eye noting every drip, every crack, every sign of decay. The building's darkness pressed around him, broken only by the beam of his flashlight. In that moment, the weight of potential failure felt crushing. But as he turned to leave, his light caught something unexpected: new artwork appearing beneath the peeling paint. The community had been adding their own touches, small acts of defiance and hope, messages of support, tiny drawings, promises to return. The discovery sparked something in Jack, not quite hope, but determination. The center wasn't just a building or a program. It was the physical manifestation of a community spirit. And that spirit, like the Phoenix itself, couldn't be destroyed by mere paperwork and politics. As he locked up the building, Jack didn't know that the real battle was just beginning. The forces aligned against them were more powerful and more personal than anyone suspected. The question wasn't just whether they could save the center, but whether Lindenwood itself could survive what was coming. The truth exploded during the public hearing, in the crowded town hall where Lindenwood's fate would be decided. Jack stood at the podium, preparing to defend the center, when Franklin Draper burst through the doors. His appearance was shocking, disheveled, eyes wild, clutching a stack of documents. "Stop," Draper commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Before anyone makes any decisions, you need to see this." He began distributing papers to the board members. Evidence of corruption, but not from the center, from City Hall itself. The documents revealed a complex web of bribes, kickbacks, and illegal dealings. Several council members had accepted payments to support development projects that would destroy West Side communities. The center's closure was part of a larger scheme to force residents out through coordinated harassment. Lauren, seated beside her father, watched in amazement as he detailed his role as an unwitting participant. "I was blind," Franklin admitted, his voice breaking. "I thought I was protecting property values, maintaining order. Instead, I became their tool for destroying lives, just like I helped destroy David's life all those years ago." The revelation about David's death struck the room like a thunderbolt. Franklin turned to face Eli directly. "I didn't just work for you back then. I was the one who told David about the condemned building, thinking he'd use it for his art. I never imagined." His voice failed him. Eli stood slowly, the weight of decades visible in his movement. "I knew," he said quietly. "I'd known for years. It's why I chose Lindenwood, why I watched you become what I once was. I needed to understand if redemption was possible for both of us." The confrontation shifted as council members began defending themselves, pointing fingers, making accusations. But Jack, watching from the podium, saw something else happening. The community members in attendance were drawing closer together, West Side and East Side united in their shock and anger. Mr. Chen stood up, his usual quiet demeanor replaced by righteous fury. He described years of selective enforcement, of permits denied without cause, of small businesses squeezed until they broke. Others followed, each story adding to the pattern of systematic oppression. Dr. Mitchell provided medical evidence showing how the center's closure had already impacted vulnerable residents. She spoke specifically about Anna, whose condition had deteriorated without coordinated care. "This isn't just about buildings and programs," she declared. "You're attacking people's lives." The confrontation reached its climax when Lauren stepped forward with her own evidence. For months she'd been documenting everything: conversations, emails, suspicious meetings. Her father's confession had given her the courage to reveal it all. "I did it for David," she said, looking at both her father and Eli, "and for every other person the system tried to destroy." Clara organized the audience, coordinating testimonies from families who'd benefited from the center. Each speaker drove home the human cost of corruption, the real impact of political games on community lives. The board members squirmed as story after story exposed their callousness. Jack, finding his voice again, turned the confrontation toward hope. He unveiled plans for an expanded community trust, developed with Eli's guidance, that would protect not just the center but the entire neighborhood from future exploitation. "We're not just fighting against corruption," he declared. "We're fighting for a new way of building community." Franklin Draper, his initial fury spent, faced the council with quiet determination. "I'll testify," he announced, "about everything. Every bribe, every threat, every illegal deal. It's time to end this." His voice carried the weight of personal redemption. The audience erupted in support, years of pent-up frustration and hope pouring out. East Side residents stood with their West Side neighbors, the artificial boundary finally shattering under the weight of shared outrage and common cause. Maggie, who had left Anna's hospital bedside to attend, captured the moment's significance. "This isn't just about saving a building," she said, her voice strong despite her exhaustion. "It's about saving our soul as a community." Ely watched it all unfold, his expression a mix of pride and sadness. The Phoenix mural, visible through the town hall windows, seemed to glow in the setting sun, its message of renewal more powerful than ever. As the hearing descended into chaos, with council members attempting to adjourn and protesters demanding immediate action, Jack caught Lauren's eye across the room. They shared a moment of understanding this wasn't the end of their struggle, but perhaps it was the beginning of real change. The confrontation had exposed the rot at Linderwood's core, but it had also revealed something else: the unshakable strength of a community united in purpose. The question now was whether they could transform this moment of crisis into lasting transformation. The aftermath of the town hall confrontation brought both victory and crisis. While the corruption investigation forced the council to reinstate the center's permits, the personal cost proved devastating. Anna's condition reached a critical point, requiring immediate intensive care that even Dr. Mitchell's connections couldn't expedite through normal channels. Jack found himself at the hospital instead of overseeing the center's reopening. The rhythmic beep of monitors and the sterile smell of antiseptic replaced the familiar sense of paint and wood from his beloved Phoenix mural. Anna lay small and pale against white sheets, her breathing labored despite the oxygen mask. "We need to transfer her to Boston Children's Hospital," Dr. Mitchell explained gently. "They have an experimental treatment program," but she hesitated, looking at Maggie's drawn face. "The insurance won't cover it, and even with the Foundation's help, the costs are astronomical." The timing couldn't have been worse. The Foundation's accounts, though cleared of wrongdoing, remained frozen in bureaucratic limbo. The legal battles had drained their emergency reserves, and the community, while supportive, was stretched thin, helping other families affected by the council's actions. At the center, problems multiplied. The weeks of closure had caused pipes to burst, flooding the basement where they stored art supplies and educational materials. Mold crept up walls, and repair estimates exceeded their budget. The Phoenix mural, their symbol of hope, began cracking under the strain of water damage. Maggie's depression returned full force. Jack found her one morning simply staring at the wall, unresponsive to his questions. The sight terrified him more than any council meeting or confrontation had. It was too similar to those dark days after his father's death. Clara tried to manage the center's reopening, but without Jack's leadership, coordination fell apart. Programs resumed haphazardly, attendance dropped, and the sense of community they'd worked so hard to build began to fray. The unity forged in confrontation struggled to survive daily challenges. Lauren faced her own crisis. Franklin Draper, though redeemed in the community's eyes, faced potential criminal charges for his role in the corruption. Their family home, tied up in legal proceedings, might be seized as evidence. The stress manifested in Lauren's increasingly erratic behavior and sleepless nights. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. Jack sat in Anna's hospital room, sketching listlessly while monitoring her breathing, when his phone buzzed with urgent messages. A second flood at the center had destroyed their remaining supplies. The insurance company had denied their claim, citing pre-existing damage. Simultaneously, Dr. Mitchell arrived with news about the Boston treatment program. They needed to decide immediately. Waiting even a few days could make Anna ineligible. The cost more money than the McAllisters could hope to raise in time. Jack felt something snap inside him. The weight of responsibility, the constant juggling of crises, the fear of losing his sister, it all crashed down at once. His hands shook so badly, he dropped his sketchbook, pages scattering across the hospital floor like broken dreams. Outside Anna's room, he finally broke down. Tears he'd held back for months poured out as he slid down the wall to sit on the cold hospital floor. The strong leader, the community organizer, the big brother who promised to fix everything in that moment, he was just a scared 15-year-old boy facing impossible choices. Clara found him there, alerted by Maggie's worried call. She sat silently beside him, offering the same quiet support he'd always given others. But this time it wasn't enough. The center needed him. Anna needed him. His mother needed him. And he couldn't be everywhere at once. The Phoenix mural haunted his thoughts, its message of renewal feeling like a cruel joke. How could anything rise from these ashes? How could he keep believing in transformation when everything he loved teetered on the edge of destruction? Eli, watching from the hospital doorway, recognized the moment for what it was. He'd seen it before, in his son's eyes years ago. The crushing weight of expectations, the desperate desire to save everyone, the final realization of human limitations, it was all horrifyingly familiar. In the center's main hall, water dripped steadily onto the Phoenix mural, each drop wearing away at the paint like tears washing away hope. The community gathered there, trying to salvage what they could, but the spirit that had driven their transformation seemed as damaged as the building itself. The question hung unspoken in the air. Had they reached the limit of what hope and determination could achieve? Or was this, like everything else in their journey, just another test of their resilience? The answer would come from an unexpected source, but first, they would have to survive their darkest hour. The decline of the Phoenix Project began like an avalanche, with small setbacks snowballing into catastrophic failure. The flooding damage proved more extensive than initially assessed, compromising the building's structural integrity. Engineers declared the main hall unsafe, forcing them to suspend all indoor programs indefinitely. Funding disappeared almost overnight. Local businesses, struggling with their own legal troubles following the corruption scandal, withdrew their support. Grant applications were denied due to the recent controversy. Even loyal donors hesitated, worried about associating with a project under such intense scrutiny. The community's spirit fractured under mounting pressure. East Side families, facing their own financial uncertainties, pulled back from volunteer commitments. West Side residents, overwhelmed by daily survival, couldn't maintain their previous level of involvement. The vibrant mix of cultures and classes that had defined their success began to segregate once again. The education program collapsed first. Without access to the center's facilities, tutoring sessions scattered to various locations, losing coherence and effectiveness. Students' grades began to slip, particularly among those who had relied most heavily on the program's support. The achievement gap they'd worked so hard to close started widening again. Art supplies, ruined by water damage, couldn't be replaced. Jack's classes moved to the park, but winter weather made outdoor sessions impossible. The creative energy that had driven their transformation dwindled to occasional sketching meetups in coffee shops and living rooms. The health coordination program, vital to families like the McAllisters, disintegrated without central organization. Dr. Mitchell struggled to maintain contact with her most vulnerable patients. Medical records, though backed up digitally, became harder to access and coordinate without the center's infrastructure. Clara's carefully crafted scheduling system fell apart. Communication broke down between different program components. Volunteers showed up to find cancelled events, while other activities suffered from lack of staffing. The sense of organized purpose devolved into chaos. The physical deterioration of the building seemed to mirror their declining morale. Each rainfall brought new damage. Mold spread through walls like a visible manifestation of their failing hopes. The Phoenix mural, their symbol of renewal, became a mockery as paint peeled and colors faded. Lauren's attempts to maintain order through proper documentation backfired when city inspectors used her detailed records to identify code violations they'd previously overlooked. Each new citation added to their mounting debt and legal complications. The media, sensing blood in the water, turned hostile. Local newspapers ran stories about mismanaged community initiatives and failed social experiments. Their previous success made the current failure seem more dramatic, more newsworthy, more damaging to everyone involved. Financial reports revealed the full extent of their crisis. Operating costs had exceeded revenue for months, masked by emergency funds that were now depleted. Bills piled up unpaid utilities, insurance, maintenance costs they could no longer defer. The community garden withered as volunteers drifted away. Food distribution became sporadic, then ceased entirely. The elderly residents who had found purpose teaching traditional crafts returned to isolation. Youth programs dissolved, leaving teenagers without constructive outlets. Staff morale plummeted. Those who had left stable jobs to join the project began quietly searching for new positions. The core team that had driven their success fragmented as personal survival took precedence over community vision. Even Mr. Reynolds, ever supportive, couldn't maintain his after-school art program without supplies and space. His students dispersed, their creative momentum broken. The portfolios they'd been building for college applications remained incomplete. The partnership network they'd built collapsed link by link. Other community organizations, facing their own challenges, couldn't sustain collaborative projects. Professional services that had been donated now came with bills they couldn't pay. Ely watched the decline with growing concern, his foundation's resources still tangled in legal restrictions. His attempts to leverage other contacts for emergency funding met with polite refusals. The timing, everyone agreed, was simply too risky. Each board meeting brought new evidence of their disintegration. Attendance dropped. Discussion devolved into circular arguments about prioritizing limited resources. The unified vision that had driven their success splintered into competing needs and dwindling hopes. The final blow came when their insurance company declared the building a total loss, citing pre-existing conditions and delayed maintenance as grounds for denying major coverage. The cost of essential repairs now exceeded any realistic fundraising goals. Jack, splitting his time between Anna's hospital room and the crumbling center, watched helplessly as his dream of community transformation unraveled. The weight of failure pressed down on him, made heavier by the knowledge that so many people had trusted his vision. In the end, it wasn't any single catastrophe that threatened to destroy them, but the accumulated weight of countless small defeats. The project that had promised to transform Lindenwood seemed poised to become another cautionary tale about the limits of hope versus reality. Anna's condition deteriorated with frightening speed. The hospital room became a maze of machines and monitors, each new device marking another step in her decline. The experimental treatment in Boston remained tantalizingly out of reach, its cost mounting as precious time slipped away. Maggie's breakdown came in stages. First, she stopped eating regularly, pushing food around her plate during rare family meals. Then sleep abandoned her. Jack would find her wandering their apartment at odd hours, touching old photographs, like she could pull memories from their surfaces. Finally, speech began to desert her, responses becoming monosyllabic when they came at all. The eviction notice arrived without warning. Their apartment building, caught in the legal fallout from the corruption scandal, faced immediate foreclosure. The new owners, a corporate investment firm, gave all residents 30 days to vacate, no exceptions, no extensions, no mercy. Dr. Mitchell fought desperately to maintain Anna's care plan, calling in personal favors and working overtime to coordinate with specialists. But without the center's support system, gaps appeared in her treatment. Each missed appointment, each delayed medication added to the risk. Jack's own health collapsed under the strain. Exhaustion turned to illness, but he couldn't afford to rest. Between hospital visits, apartment hunting, and trying to care for his mother, he pushed himself until his body simply gave out. He fainted during a meeting with potential donors, the room spinning into darkness as his reserves finally depleted. The family's financial situation became dire. Medical bills multiplied faster than their ability to organize them. Insurance denied claims with bureaucratic efficiency, each rejection letter another nail in their hopes. Maggie's savings, carefully hoarded over years of double shifts, vanished into the endless maw of healthcare costs. Anna, despite her weakness, tried to stay strong for her family. She drew pictures from her hospital bed, wobbly phoenixes and family portraits, but her hands shook too much to finish them. Each incomplete drawing became another symbol of their fracturing world. The apartment's dismantling felt like a physical assault. Each box packed represented another piece of their life displaced. Jack found himself unable to sleep in his own room, surrounded by cardboard containers labeled with destinations they couldn't yet name. Maggie's depression manifested in dangerous ways. She forgot to take her own medications, missed important appointments, lost track of time for hours at a stretch. The resilient woman who had held them together after Tom's death seemed to be disappearing into herself. The hospital's social worker began asking pointed questions about their home situation. The threat of child protective services loomed not from neglect, but from the system's inability to recognize poverty as distinct from parental failure. Jack lived in fear of being separated from his family when they needed each other most. Dr. Mitchell discovered concerning patterns in Anna's latest tests. Without aggressive intervention, her condition could become irreversible. The doctor's voice cracked as she explained the timeline. They had weeks, not months, to change the course of Anna's illness. The search for new housing proved futile. Their budget, stretched beyond breaking by medical bills, didn't match any available rentals. Each rejection added to Maggie's withdrawal, her silence deepening with every closed door. Jack found his mother in the bathroom one night, staring at an open bottle of sleeping pills. The look in her eyes terrified him more than any medical emergency or financial crisis. That night, he stayed awake watching her breathe, afraid to let her out of his sight. Anna's roommate, a young girl named Sarah, passed away quietly one night. The loss hit Anna hard. They had become friends, sharing jokes and dreams between treatments. The empty bed beside her became a stark reminder of what they were fighting against. The hospital bills arrived with brutal regularity, each envelope thicker than the last. Insurance appeals disappeared into administrative black holes. Even with Dr. Mitchell's intervention, the costs mounted beyond any realistic possibility of payment. Their apartment, once a haven of family memories, began to feel like a trap. Water damage from neglected repairs spread across ceilings. Heat worked sporadically. Each failing system seemed to mock their own decline. Jack tried to maintain his school attendance, but concentration became impossible. His grades plummeted. Teachers' concerns turned to warnings about failing the year. The education that had been his hope for the future seemed to be slipping away along with everything else. The final blow came when Anna developed a severe infection. Her weakened immune system struggled to fight back. The hospital moved her to intensive care, further restricting the already limited time Jack and Maggie could spend with her. In their darkest hour, the family that had survived Tom's death, poverty, and countless other challenges faced the possibility of complete dissolution. The question wasn't just whether they would survive intact, but whether they could survive at all. The disintegration of community support happened gradually, then suddenly. The unity forged through shared purpose fractured under the weight of individual survival. East Side residents, facing their own financial uncertainties after the corruption scandal, began withdrawing not just resources but empathy. Old prejudices resurfaced with stunning speed. Whispers circulated about poor financial management and lack of proper oversight. The same programs that had been praised as innovative were now criticized as irresponsible. Former supporters distanced themselves, afraid of being associated with failure. The center's regular volunteers dwindled from dozens to a handful. Clara struggled to maintain basic services with skeleton crews. Programs that had once served hundreds now operated sporadically, if at all. The sense of shared purpose that had defined their success gave way to resignation and blame. East Side parents pulled their children from mixed study groups, citing concerns about academic standards. The educational partnerships that had begun breaking down achievement barriers now reinforced them. The invisible line dividing Lindenwood reasserted itself with cruel efficiency. Former allies turned critics. Business owners who had once proudly supported the project now claimed they'd been pressured into participation. Community leaders who had praised their initiative remained conspicuously silent as problems mounted. The isolation of the West Side community deepened. The media narrative shifted from inspiration to cautionary tale. Local news outlets that had once celebrated their success now ran stories questioning every decision, every expenditure, every ambitious goal. The coverage painted a picture of naive idealism crushed by practical realities. Even within the West Side community, unity crumbled. Families competing for dwindling resources turned against each other. The spirit of mutual support gave way to desperate self-preservation. Long-standing friendships fractured under the strain of shared poverty. The center's board meetings devolved into bitter arguments. Different factions pushed competing priorities: save the building, maintain programs, focus on legal defense. The shared vision that had driven their success splintered into irreconcilable differences. Trust, once their strongest asset, eroded daily. Rumors spread about misused funds, though no evidence existed. Questions arose about Eli's true motives, despite his consistent support. The community that had come together to fight corruption now suspected corruption in their own ranks. But cultural programs that had celebrated diversity became flashpoints for tension. Language barriers, once bridged by goodwill, widened into chasms of misunderstanding. The rich tapestry of community life unraveled into separate threads of isolated struggle. The community garden, once a symbol of cooperation, fell into neglect. Families who had shared harvests now locked their plots. The open exchange of food and friendship that had characterized their success withered like untended plants. Youth programs suffered particularly harsh division. Teenagers who had formed friendships across social boundaries retreated to their respective sides of town. The hope of breaking generational cycles of prejudice dimmed as young people absorbed adult fears and resentments. The art program, Jack's original bridge between communities, lost its unifying power. Creative expression that had once brought people together became another marker of division. The Phoenix mural, weathering and neglected, stood as a reminder of failed dreams rather than renewed hope. Religious communities that had worked together now held separate services, separate charity drives, separate visions of community welfare. The interfaith cooperation that had strengthened their programs gave way to isolated efforts and competitive outreach. Senior citizens who had found purpose teaching young people returned to isolation. The intergenerational connections that had enriched both young and old weakened and broke. The wisdom of experience and the energy of youth no longer flowed freely between age groups. Language classes that had helped immigrants and long-term residents communicate effectively lost funding and support. The careful work of building cross-cultural understanding founded on the rocks of financial pressure and social strain. The community center itself became a symbol of division rather than unity. What had once been neutral ground became contested territory, each group claiming rightful ownership of space and resources. The building's physical deterioration reflected the decay of community bonds. Even the success stories that had inspired others turned sour. Families who had risen from poverty through community support now faced criticism for taking advantage. The narrative of shared achievement transformed into accusations of unearned benefits. The final blow to unity came when several East Side families filed a lawsuit, claiming the project had decreased their property values. The legal action formalized the division, turning neighbors into opposing parties in a court battle none of them could really afford. As winter deepened, the physical separation of East and West Lindenwood seemed more absolute than ever. The invisible boundary hardened into an impenetrable barrier, reinforced by fear, resentment, and the bitter taste of failed dreams. The question was no longer whether they could save the project, but whether the community itself could survive its loss. The truth emerged during a crisis meeting in Anna's hospital room as monitors beeped steadily in the background. Ely arrived not as the humble supporter they'd known, but as Elias Montgomery, chairman of the largest healthcare foundation on the East Coast. His appearance in an immaculate suit, surrounded by a team of lawyers and medical specialists, marked the beginning of revelations that would transform everything. This was never just about saving one community, Ely explained, his voice carrying both authority and compassion. Lindenwood was chosen as a pilot program, a test case for a new model of community regeneration. Everything that's happened, even the setbacks, has been carefully documented and analyzed. The lawyers distributed thick folders containing detailed plans. The Phoenix Foundation had been quietly acquiring properties throughout the neighborhood, not just the community center. The corruption scandal, while real, had provided cover for a larger strategy of community preservation and development. The freezing of foundation accounts was strategic, Ely continued, watching their faces process this information. We needed to see how the community would respond to crisis, whether the bonds we'd helped build would hold or break. Every challenge was a test of resilience. He turned to Jack, his expression softening. Your father didn't die by accident. He discovered evidence of widespread corruption in the construction industry, the same corruption we've been quietly investigating for years. His death was covered up, but it became the catalyst for choosing Lindenwood. The revelation hit Jack like a physical blow. His father's death, the source of so much pain, had inadvertently sparked a movement larger than anyone could have imagined. The phoenix rising from ashes took on new, personal meaning. Lauren gasped as Ely revealed her father's unexpected role. Franklin Draper's apparent opposition had been partially orchestrated, designed to unite the community against a common adversary. His redemption arc, while genuine, had been subtly guided by Ely's invisible hand. Your brother's death changed both of us, Ely said to Franklin, who sat stunned in the corner of the hospital room. But while I ran from my guilt, you channeled yours into maintaining control. We needed to break that pattern to heal both you and this community. The master plan extended far beyond Lindenwood. Similar projects were being prepared in communities across the country, each building on lessons learned from their experience. The documentation of their struggles and successes would become a blueprint for community renewal nationwide. Caroline stepped forward, revealing her own role as the Foundation's lead researcher. She had been chronicling everything: the art program's impact on youth development, the effectiveness of cross-cultural initiatives, the economic benefits of integrated community support systems. The real test wasn't whether you could succeed with unlimited resources, she explained, her father's determination evident in her voice. It was whether a community could maintain its soul while fighting for survival. You've proven it can. Dr. Mitchell, they learned, had been more than just a supportive physician. She represented a coalition of healthcare providers working to develop new models of community-based care. Anna's case would help establish protocols for maintaining complex medical support through community health networks. The flood damage, the frozen accounts, even some of the community division, all had been partially engineered to test different aspects of resilience. But the responses, the solutions, the ways people came together or fell apart, those had been genuinely their own. We needed to understand what works and what doesn't, Eli explained, but we couldn't fake the heart of it. The kindness Jack showed that first day, the way the community rallied around each other, the determination to maintain dignity in the face of adversity, that was all real. The plan's next phase would surprise everyone. The foundation would not only restore the community center but establish it as the headquarters for a national community renewal initiative. Lindenwood would become a training ground for other communities seeking to replicate their success. Jack's art program, they revealed, had already inspired similar initiatives in other cities. His Phoenix design had been quietly adopted as a symbol of community resilience across multiple pilot programs. His intuitive approach to building bridges through creativity had helped shape the foundation's methodology. As the scope of Eli's master plan became clear, the atmosphere in the hospital room shifted from shock to cautious hope. The challenges they'd faced, while painful, had served a purpose beyond their immediate community. Their struggles would help light the way for others. But none of this works without trust, Eli concluded, looking around the room. Now that you know the full story, the choice of how to proceed is yours. We can either build something unprecedented together, or we can walk away and let Lindenwood find its own path. The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of Anna's monitors, as everyone absorbed the magnitude of what they'd learned and the weight of the decision before them. The revelation of Eli's master plan sent shockwaves through Lindenwood, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of anger at being tested, the community experienced a profound awakening. The knowledge that their struggles had meaning beyond mere survival sparked a renaissance of purpose and determination. The first sign of change came from the East Side residents who had withdrawn their support. Learning that their community had been chosen as a national model shifted their perspective from shame to pride. The Mays, who had distanced themselves from the project, now stepped forward, eager to be part of something historically significant. The lawsuit over property values transformed overnight into a proposal for integrated neighborhood development. East Side homeowners, realizing the potential value of being part of a pioneering community renewal project, withdrew their legal challenges. Instead, they began offering resources and expertise to strengthen the initiative. Franklin Draper's public confession became a turning point. Standing before a packed town hall meeting, he shared the full story of his son's death, his connection to Eli, and his gradual understanding of how his pain had corrupted his vision of community. His vulnerability cracked the facade of division that had hardened over decades. Local businesses, inspired by the broader vision, created a community investment cooperative. Mr. Chen's grocery store became the model for a new type of neighborhood business that balanced profit with social responsibility. Other shop owners began adapting their practices to support community integration. The school system, recognizing their role in a nationally significant project, revised policies that had reinforced social divisions. Teachers who had once tracked students based on socioeconomic status now focused on identifying and nurturing individual talents. The achievement gap began closing as resources were distributed more equitably, but religious leaders from different faiths came together to create an interfaith council focused on spiritual and community healing. The various churches, mosques, and temples that had operated in isolation now coordinated their charitable efforts, multiplying their impact through cooperation. Youth involvement surged as teenagers realized they were part of something revolutionary. What had begun as Jack's art program evolved into a youth leadership initiative that other communities wanted to replicate. Students who had retreated to their respective sides of town found renewed purpose in working together. The community center, rather than dividing people through its struggles, became a symbol of resilience and possibility. Volunteers returned in greater numbers than before, now understanding that their efforts would influence similar projects across the country. The sense of purpose was palpable. Cultural programs flourished with new vitality. Language barriers that had reasserted themselves during the crisis dissolved as residents recognized the value of their diversity. The sharing of traditions, food, and stories resumed with deeper appreciation for their role in community building. Senior citizens who had withdrawn into isolation emerged to share their wisdom with renewed confidence. Their life experiences, they realized, could help guide other communities through similar transformations. Intergenerational connections strengthened as young people sought to learn from their elders' perspectives. The Phoenix mural took on new significance. What had seemed like a fading symbol of failed dreams now represented something larger: a community's ability to rise from adversity stronger and wiser. Jack began incorporating elements from other neighborhood stories, creating a visual narrative of shared struggle and triumph. Healthcare initiatives expanded beyond traditional medical services. Dr. Mitchell's community care model, supported by Eli's Foundation, began addressing social determinants of health through integrated support systems. The approach showed promising results, particularly for vulnerable residents like Anna. The invisible boundary between East and West Lindenwood didn't disappear overnight, but it became more permeable. Families began crossing more freely, drawn by shared interests rather than divided by old prejudices. Children played together in parks that had once marked territory lines. Community gardens sprouted again, this time with deliberate mixing of plots to encourage interaction. Families who had locked their gardens now shared harvests, seeds, and cultivation techniques. The simple act of growing food together became a powerful tool for building relationships. The media narrative shifted as journalists recognized the deeper story unfolding. Instead of focusing on division and failure, they began documenting the process of community transformation. Lindenwood's example inspired other towns to examine their own social divisions. Even the physical restoration of buildings took on new meaning. Residents understood that they weren't just repairing structures but creating spaces that would serve as models for other communities. The care and creativity they invested reflected their awareness of this larger purpose. Most importantly, the knowledge that their struggles would help others gave meaning to their hardships. The pain hadn't been pointless, the setbacks hadn't been failures, but stepping stones toward understanding what true community renewal required. This awareness transformed their perspective from victims of circumstance to pioneers of change. As winter began yielding to spring, Lindenwood awakened to its role not just as a community fighting for survival, but as a beacon of hope for others facing similar challenges. The question was no longer whether they could overcome their divisions, but how their example could light the way for others. Franklin Draper's transformation became the most profound symbol of personal change in Lindenwood. One evening, as he stood before the Phoenix mural with Jack, he finally shared the full story of his son's battle with addiction. "James was so much like you," he said quietly. "He saw beauty where others saw decay. He tried to show me what I was destroying with my drive for profit." The weight of guilt lifted visibly from his shoulders as he spoke. Each memory shared seemed to soften the hard lines of his face. He revealed how fear of facing his own culpability had turned him into the very thing he once despised: a man who valued property over people, control over compassion. Lauren discovered her own strength through the crisis. What she had seen as betrayal of her father became the catalyst for his redemption. Her careful documentation of community struggles, intended as evidence against him, had instead created a roadmap for healing. The realization transformed her relationship with both her father and her own past. Maggie's healing began when she learned the truth about Tom's death. The knowledge that he died trying to expose corruption gave purpose to their loss. Her depression, while still present, began to lift as she understood that their struggles were part of a larger fight for justice. She started counseling others who had lost loved ones to corporate negligence. For Jack, the revelations came in layers. His father's role in uncovering corruption, Eli's long-term investment in their community, the impact of his art beyond Lindenwood. Each piece helped him understand his own journey differently. The burden of responsibility shifted from crushing weight to shared purpose. Clara found validation in learning that her instinctive approach to community organizing had helped shape the Foundation's methodology. Her ability to bridge social divides, once dismissed as naive idealism, was now recognized as a crucial skill for community renewal. She began training other young leaders in her techniques. Dr. Mitchell discovered that her medical expertise had been only part of her contribution. Her genuine care for patients, her willingness to fight bureaucracy for their needs, her understanding of community health all had helped demonstrate the importance of integrated healthcare approaches. She became a leading voice for medical reform. Mr. Chen's role evolved from struggling shop owner to community business mentor. His store's survival through crisis, maintained through a combination of traditional values and innovative practices, became a model for other small businesses. He began teaching other merchants how to balance profit with community service. The Rodriguez family's story of immigration and integration took on new significance as their experience helped shape policies for other communities. Their ability to maintain cultural identity while building bridges across social divides provided valuable lessons for neighborhood renewal programs. For Caroline, reconciliation with Eli gained deeper meaning through their shared work. Understanding her father's journey of redemption helped her process her own past anger and pain. Their relationship, once broken by wealth and power, healed through shared commitment to community transformation. Anna's illness, while still serious, became part of a larger narrative of hope. Her resilience inspired medical professionals to rethink patient care approaches. The community's response to her needs demonstrated the importance of social support in healing. Her art therapy sessions became a model for other pediatric programs. But Mr. Reynolds discovered that his role extended far beyond art education. His quiet support of students like Jack, his belief in art's power to transform communities, his dedication to nurturing talent regardless of social status all contributed to a new understanding of education's role in community building. The high school students who had maintained connections across social boundaries found their friendships validated. What had seemed like youthful idealism proved to be practical wisdom about community integration. Their natural ability to see beyond social barriers became a valuable lesson for adults. Elderly residents who had withdrawn during the crisis emerged as essential voices in community memory. Their stories of past struggles and triumphs provided context for current challenges. Their wisdom, once overlooked, became crucial for understanding long-term community dynamics. For the Phoenix Foundation staff, Lindenwood's experience revealed the limitations of top-down community development. They learned that true transformation required a delicate balance between external support and local leadership. Their approach to other communities shifted accordingly. Each personal revelation contributed to the larger understanding of what makes communities work. The individual stories of change, growth, and healing became part of Lindenwood's collective wisdom that would guide other neighborhoods facing similar challenges. As spring approached, these personal transformations began weaving together into a new community narrative. The phoenix rising from ashes was no longer just a mural on a wall, but a living story of redemption, resilience, and renewal, a story written in the changed lives of Lindenwood's residents. The transformation of Lindenwood culminated in a series of triumphs that exceeded even Eli's ambitious vision. The community center, fully restored and expanded, became a national model for integrated social services. Its design, incorporating elements from both Jack's artistic vision and practical community needs, set new standards for community spaces. Anna's recovery marked the first major victory. The experimental treatment, fully funded through the Phoenix Foundation's healthcare initiative, proved remarkably successful. Her improvement became a symbol of hope, demonstrating how community support could change medical outcomes. She returned home to a celebration that united East and West Side residents in shared joy. The education program's success attracted national attention. Test scores across Lindenwood showed unprecedented improvement, with the achievement gap between East and West Side students nearly eliminated. Universities began offering scholarships specifically for Lindenwood students, recognizing their unique experience in community building. Jack's art program expanded beyond anyone's expectations. The Phoenix mural, professionally restored and expanded, became the centerpiece of a public art initiative that spread throughout the neighborhood. Buildings once marked by decay now displayed vibrant artworks telling stories of community renewal. Professional artists sought residencies in Lindenwood, drawn by its reputation for creative innovation. The business district underwent a remarkable revival. Mr. Chen's grocery store grew into a cooperative market that combined affordable food access with job training. New businesses opened under a community investment model that ensured local ownership and fair employment practices. The economic divide that had defined Lindenwood began to blur. Housing transformation occurred without displacement. The Phoenix Foundation's property trust ensured long-term residents could remain while buildings were renovated. Mixed-income developments replaced decaying structures, creating spaces where families from different backgrounds lived as neighbors rather than strangers. Franklin Draper's redemption became complete when he established a recovery center in his son's memory. The facility, housed in a beautifully restored Victorian mansion, offered free treatment to community members struggling with addiction. His personal story of transformation helped others find their path to healing. The healthcare initiative, pioneered through Dr. Mitchell's work, revolutionized community medicine. The integrated care model, combining traditional medical services with social support and preventive programs, attracted attention from medical schools and policymakers. Health outcomes improved across all demographic groups. Cultural programs flourished beyond expectation. Language classes evolved into cultural exchange festivals that drew visitors from across the state. Traditional crafts taught by elderly residents became sought-after artisanal products. The community's diversity, once seen as a challenge, became its greatest strength. Youth leadership programs, inspired by Jack and Clara's example, produced a new generation of community organizers. Teenagers who had participated in early center programs returned from college to start similar initiatives in other neighborhoods. Their success proved the model's sustainability. The Community Garden Project expanded into an urban agriculture network. Vacant lots transformed into productive green spaces that provided fresh food and environmental benefits. The program created jobs, improved nutrition, and strengthened community bonds through shared cultivation. Social services integration reached new levels of effectiveness. The center's one-stop model, providing everything from job training to childcare, became a blueprint for other communities. The approach significantly reduced poverty rates while increasing family stability and economic mobility. Environmental initiatives made Lindenwood a leader in urban sustainability. Solar panels covered renovated buildings, community composting reduced waste, and green infrastructure improved stormwater management. The neighborhood's transformation included ecological as well as social renewal. Sports and recreation programs brought children together across former dividing lines. The community center's expanded facilities hosted tournaments that drew teams from throughout the region. These events helped change outsiders' perceptions of Lindenwood while strengthening internal bonds. The arts continued leading community integration. Regular performances, exhibitions, and festivals celebrated Lindenwood's diverse talents. The center's theater program, starting with humble community productions, grew to attract professional collaborations while maintaining its community focus. Economic opportunities multiplied through innovative job training programs. Partnerships with local businesses provided apprenticeships and career pathways. The community bank, established through the Phoenix Foundation, offered microloans and financial education that helped residents build wealth. Transportation improvements connected previously isolated areas. New bike paths, improved bus services, and pedestrian-friendly streets made it easier for residents to access opportunities throughout the neighborhood. Physical barriers between east and west sides disappeared as movement became fluid. Education extended beyond traditional academics. The center offered lifelong learning programs that ranged from practical skills to cultural enrichment. Intergenerational teaching partnerships preserved community knowledge while creating meaningful connections across age groups. The success of Lindenwood's transformation became measurable in both statistics and stories. Crime rates fell, property values stabilized without causing displacement, and health indicators improved. More importantly, residents spoke of belonging, of pride in their community, of hope for the future. As spring bloomed fully, Lindenwood stood as testament to what communities could achieve through unified purpose and sustained support. The Phoenix had truly risen, bringing with it a new model of urban renewal that preserved the soul of a community while transforming its circumstances. Anna's full recovery surpassed medical expectations. Her final treatment session ended with a celebration that filled the hospital's pediatric ward. She walked out under her own power, carrying a portfolio of artwork created during her healing journey. Her Phoenix drawings, displayed alongside Jack's in the community center, told a powerful story of personal resilience. Maggie emerged from depression transformed. She completed counseling certification and began leading support groups for families facing similar challenges. The quiet strength that had sustained her through tragedy became a beacon for others. Her smile, absent for so long after Tom's death, returned with genuine warmth. Jack's artistic talent received national recognition. His portfolio, documenting Lindenwood's transformation through sketches and murals, earned him a full scholarship to a prestigious art school. More importantly, his work inspired similar projects in other communities, proving that art could drive social change. Clara's leadership abilities blossomed beyond anyone's expectations. Universities competed to recruit her, impressed by her role in the community's transformation. She chose to study urban planning, determined to build on her practical experience in community development. Her methods for bridging social divides became part of training programs nationwide. Lauren reconciled with Franklin in ways that healed them both. Their shared experience of loss and redemption strengthened their bond. She discovered her own talent for community organizing, combining her father's business acumen with a deep commitment to social justice. Together, they created programs helping other families affected by addiction. Franklin Draper's transformation became complete when he dedicated his business skills to community service. The man who once prioritized profit above all else now taught financial literacy to West Side residents. His journey from feared landlord to respected community elder inspired other business leaders to reconsider their priorities. Dr. Mitchell's innovative healthcare approach earned her department additional funding and recognition. She established a medical scholarship program for Lindenwood students, ensuring the community would have healthcare providers who understood its unique needs. Her integration of social support with medical care became a model for urban health centers. Mr. Chen expanded his grocery store into a successful cooperative that employed local youth. His business model, balancing profit with community service, attracted attention from economic development experts. He began mentoring other small business owners, sharing lessons learned during Lindenwood's transformation. The Rodriguez family's cooking classes evolved into a successful catering business that preserved cultural traditions while creating jobs. Their story of immigration, struggle, and success became part of Lindenwood's official history. Their weekly community dinners continued bringing people together across social boundaries. Ely and Caroline's relationship healed through their shared commitment to community renewal. Their foundation's success in Lindenwood led to similar projects nationwide. They worked together documenting the process, turning personal redemption into practical guidance for other communities. Mr. Reynolds received recognition for his role in nurturing young talent. His art program became a model for creative education in urban schools. The quiet teacher who had believed in Jack's potential now helped other educators recognize and develop their students' gifts. The high school students who had crossed social boundaries formed lasting friendships that continued into college. Their experience breaking down barriers prepared them for leadership roles in various fields. Many returned to Lindenwood as professionals, strengthening the community's future. Senior citizens who had shared their skills found renewed purpose teaching traditional crafts to younger generations. Their wisdom, once overlooked, became crucial for preserving community heritage. The intergenerational connections they built strengthened Lindenwood's social fabric. The community center staff, who had weathered the crisis, emerged as experts in social service integration. Their experience handling challenges while maintaining hope made them valuable mentors for other communities. Many advanced to leadership positions in similar projects nationwide. Local religious leaders who had worked together through difficulties formed lasting interfaith partnerships. Their cooperation on social issues demonstrated how different faiths could unite for community good. Their example inspired similar collaboration in other neighborhoods. The teenagers who had participated in early center programs returned from college with new skills to share. Their success proved that community investment in youth paid long-term dividends. Many chose careers in public service, inspired by their experience in Lindenwood's transformation. The families who had faced eviction found stability through the Community Housing Trust. Their stories of perseverance through hardship became part of Lindenwood's collective memory. Many became advocates for housing justice, helping other communities develop similar programs. Most importantly, the children who had grown up watching Lindenwood's transformation developed a strong sense of community responsibility. They understood that positive change required both vision and persistent effort. Their generation promised to carry forward the legacy of renewal and hope. These personal victories, woven together, created a tapestry of triumph that extended far beyond individual success. Each story of growth, healing, and achievement strengthened the community's collective resilience. The phoenix rising on the community center wall now represented not just hope, but fulfilled promise. Lindenwood's transformation carried profound messages that resonated far beyond its boundaries. The community's journey from division to unity, from despair to hope, offered lessons about the true nature of community renewal and human resilience. The first message emerged through the power of youth leadership. Jack's initial act of kindness, sharing his lunch with a stranger despite his own poverty, demonstrated how young people's natural compassion could catalyze social change. His ability to see beyond surface appearances, to recognize humanity in everyone, became a cornerstone of community building. The importance of authentic relationships proved crucial. Real change didn't come from programs or funding alone, but from genuine connections between people. The friendships that crossed social boundaries, the trust built through shared struggles, the understanding that grew between former adversaries, these human bonds formed the foundation of lasting transformation. Art's role in social change became undeniable. The Phoenix mural did more than beautify a building, it provided a visual language for hope and renewal. Creative expression gave voice to those often silenced, helped heal old wounds, and created new narratives of possibility. Jack's artwork showed how beauty could emerge from struggle, inspiring others to see potential in seemingly hopeless situations. The project demonstrated that true community development must preserve existing social fabric while enabling growth. Unlike traditional urban renewal that often displaced residents, Lindenwood's transformation maintained its soul while improving conditions. The community's diversity, once seen as a problem to solve, became its greatest strength. Healthcare emerged as a fundamental community right rather than an individual burden. Anna's story showed how medical outcomes improved when treatment integrated social support. Dr. Mitchell's approach proved that community-based healthcare could address root causes of illness while providing acute care. The power of intergenerational connection became clear. When elders shared their wisdom and young people contributed their energy and vision, the community grew stronger. These relationships preserved cultural heritage while fostering innovation, creating a bridge between past and future. Franklin Draper's transformation illustrated that redemption was possible even for those who seemed most opposed to change. His journey from feared landlord to community advocate showed how personal healing could contribute to collective renewal. His story offered hope for other communities facing similar opposition. The project proved that economic development didn't require sacrificing social justice. Through cooperative businesses, job training programs, and equitable housing policies, Lindenwood demonstrated how communities could prosper without displacing vulnerable residents. Mr. Chen's grocery store showed how business could serve both profit and social good. Education's role extended beyond traditional academics. The community centers programs showed how learning flourished when connected to real-world challenges. Students achieved more when education addressed whole-person development and community needs simultaneously. The importance of acknowledging past wounds while building future hope became evident. The community's ability to address historical injustices while working toward positive change allowed for true healing. This balance between accountability and forgiveness created space for genuine transformation. Environmental sustainability proved inseparable from community well-being. Green spaces, urban gardens, and ecological initiatives improved both physical health and social connections. The community's commitment to environmental stewardship showed how local action could address global challenges. The project demonstrated that external support must empower rather than control local leadership. Ely's Foundation succeeded because it recognized and strengthened existing community assets rather than imposing outside solutions. This approach created sustainable change that continued beyond initial investment. The power of story emerged as a crucial tool for social change. As residents shared their experiences, collected their histories, and documented their transformation, they created new narratives that challenged stereotypes and inspired hope. These stories became resources for other communities facing similar challenges. Most importantly, Lindenwood's experience showed that community transformation required both practical action and spiritual renewal. The physical improvements mattered, but the restoration of hope, dignity, and human connection mattered more. The phoenix rising on the community center wall became more than a symbol. It represented the human spirit's capacity for renewal. As spring fully bloomed in Lindenwood, the message became clear: true community renewal grows from the seeds of compassion, is nurtured by collective effort, and blooms in the garden of shared hope. The neighborhood's transformation offered a blueprint not just for urban renewal, but for healing the divisions that fragment communities everywhere. The legacy would continue through the young people who had witnessed and participated in the change. They carried forward the understanding that community wasn't just a place to live, but a shared commitment to each other's well-being. Their generation promised to spread these lessons, ensuring that Lindenwood's transformation would inspire hope and renewal far into the future. Thank you for joining us on this inspiring journey through Lindenwood's transformation. If this story touched your heart or made you think about your own community, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What moments resonated with you? How has kindness impacted your life? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of hope and renewal. Your support helps us continue sharing these important narratives of community transformation. Hit the like button if you believe in the power of compassion to change lives, and share this video with friends and family who might need a reminder that positive change is possible. Together we can spread the message that every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to transform communities and inspire hope. Join our growing family of storytellers and believers in the power of human connection.